I won $23.5 million in the lottery, but didn't tell anyone. My son said, "Dad, when are you finally moving out of our house?" I quietly got up from the table and left. The next morning, I bought their dream house, but not for them. Good evening, friends. My name is Harold Edwin Pierce, but everyone calls me Harry. I'm 73 years old, and I want to tell you about the night my own son made me feel like a stranger in what I thought was my home. Let me start from the beginning, because beginnings matter. 2 years ago, my Betty passed away from cancer. We'd been married 48 years. I served in Vietnam from 1967 to 1969, came home, married my high school sweetheart, and worked as an auto mechanic for 42 years. We raised our boy Ryan right, or so I thought. After Betty's funeral, Ryan stood in my kitchen and said, "Dad, you can't stay here alone. Come live with us." I looked around at the house Betty and I had built together, at the workshop where I'd taught Ryan how to use tools, and I said yes. Maybe I should have asked more questions. Ryan's house in the suburbs was everything mine wasn't. Big, modern, expensive. His wife, Jessica Pierce, had decorated it in what she called contemporary style. White walls, fancy furniture you couldn't sit on, and a kitchen that looked like a showroom. It was nice, I guess, but it wasn't home. They gave me the guest bedroom downstairs, small window, view of the fence. I was told not to move anything around. The first few months, I told myself it was temporary. Jessica was busy with her real estate business. Ryan worked long hours managing construction projects. Their kids, Bradley, 14, and Ashley, 11, barely noticed I was there unless they needed something. I tried to help out where I could. Fixed things around the house that were broken. Cooked breakfast sometimes when Jessica was running late. Helped with homework when the kids asked. Kept quiet and stayed out of the way. But slowly, over those 18 months, I started feeling like I was disappearing. There was the time Jessica had her book club over and introduced me as Ryan's father who's staying with us temporarily. Like I was a house guest who'd forgotten to leave. There was the Sunday they took the kids out for brunch without mentioning it to me. I came downstairs at 10 in the morning to find a note on the counter, backed by 2 coffees in the pot. But the thing that really got to me happened in October. I was coming back from the bathroom late one evening when I heard Jessica's voice floating down the hallway from their bedroom. The walls in that house weren't thick enough for the conversations they had. "He uses our utilities, eats our food, and contributes what exactly?" "Your dad's been here 18 months, Ryan. What's the plan?" I stood in that hallway for a long minute, then walked back to my room and closed the door very quietly. That night, I lay awake thinking about Betty, about our little house with the yellow kitchen where I'd never felt like a burden. I thought about what I'd given up to be here, and for what, to be tolerated. The next few months passed in a kind of fog. I kept helping around the house, kept being the quiet man at the end of the hall, but something had shifted. I started noticing things I'd been trying not to see. The way Jessica would look at me when I used too much hot water for my shower. The way Ryan would change the subject when I tried to talk about anything that might cost money. The way both of them had stopped asking my opinion about anything. December came and went. Then January, I was starting to think about what my options might be when February rolled around and changed everything. The lottery ticket was pure chance. I stopped at the gas station on Route 47 after a doctor's appointment on a Thursday afternoon. The machine was right there by the register. I'd bought maybe 10 tickets in my whole life, never expecting anything. Just something to do while the attendant rang up my coffee and beef jerky. I tucked that ticket in my coat pocket and forgot about it for 5 days. I found out I'd won on a Wednesday morning, sitting alone at their kitchen table with my reading glasses and a cup of instant coffee. I was looking through the local paper when I saw the winning numbers from the previous Saturday's drawing. Something made me check my coat pocket. I checked the numbers twice, then 3 times. Then I just sat there for a long time, staring out at their backyard pool covered for winter, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. $23.50 million. After federal and state taxes, about $14.27. I didn't make a sound. I folded that ticket carefully and slipped it inside my Bible, right between the pages of Psalms where I kept the bookmark Betty had made me years ago. And I said nothing to anyone. That was February. The dinner happened in March, and it changed everything between my son and me forever. It was a Tuesday evening. Nothing special about the day or the meal. Jessica had made meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans from a bag. Bradley was texting under the table like always. Ashley was complaining about some girl at school who'd been mean to her. Ryan was eating fast, the way he always did when he was stressed about work deadlines. Jessica was talking about some property deal that was supposed to close on Friday. I was passing the basket of rolls around the table when Ryan said it. He didn't even look up from his plate. His voice wasn't cruel, just tired. Like he'd been thinking about it for months and finally decided to get it out in the open. Dad, when are you actually planning to move out? I mean, what's the plan here? The table went dead quiet. Jessica looked down at her food. Bradley stopped texting and glanced up from his phone. Ashley's fork froze halfway to her mouth, a piece of green bean hanging there. I looked at my son. The boy I'd taught to throw a curveball in our backyard. The kid who'd cried for 2 hours when our dog Duke died. The teenager who'd helped me rebuild a transmission when he was 16. The man who was now 45 years old and looking at me like I was a problem he couldn't solve. I set down the basket of rolls, folded my napkin nice and neat, pushed back my chair and stood up. "Excuse me," I said, and I walked away from that table. I didn't go to my room like they probably expected. I went outside to their back patio and sat in one of those expensive chairs nobody ever used. It was cold that March evening, but I needed the air. I needed to think. I looked up at the sky, which was turning that deep blue color it gets right before full dark, and I thought about Betty. What would she say about her boy talking to his father like that? I wasn't a man who cried easy. 42 years of fixing engines and 2 years in Vietnam had taught me to keep things steady. But sitting out there in the cold, I felt something I hadn't felt since Betty died. Not just sadness, anger. For 18 months, I'd been cooking their breakfasts and fixing their broken faucets and babysitting their kids when asked. I'd made myself small in their big house, trying not to be a burden, trying to earn my keep. And this was what I got. My own son asking me when I was leaving like I was some tenant behind on rent. I thought about where I'd go. That was the scary part. My house with Betty had been sold 10 months after I moved in with them. Ryan had suggested it, said it made financial sense. "Dad, you're not going back there alone. Keeping it empty is just costing you money." He'd been right, I suppose, but I'd cried for 3 days after that closing. The sale had left me with $125,000 in savings, plus my Social Security and small pension from the garage where I'd worked. Enough to live on modestly, not enough to buy anything decent in this market. At least, that's what I'd thought until 5 days ago. Sitting in that cold backyard, I did math in my head for the first time with different numbers: $14.27, 14, 27, 27, 27, 14, 27, 27, 27 to LF. The number still felt unreal, like a word in a foreign language I was just learning to speak, but it would become very real very soon. I sat outside for over an hour. When I finally came back in, the kitchen was cleaned up and everyone had scattered to their rooms. No knock on my door that night. "No, Dad. Are you okay?" No, maybe I put that wrong. Just silence, which somehow hurt worse than the question itself. I lay awake until 3 in the morning doing the most important thinking of my life. Fear came first, I'll be honest. I was scared of being alone at 73. Scared of making mistakes with money I'd never dreamed of having. Scared of what it would mean to walk away from my only son. But then I thought about something my drill sergeant used to say in Vietnam. Fear keeps you alive for about 5 minutes. After that, it just keeps you from living. I thought about what I'd actually seen these past 18 months. Not what I'd told myself, not the excuses I'd made for them, but the real evidence. Jessica talking about my cost-benefit ratio to the household. Ryan asking when I was leaving without even looking at me. The way they'd all watched me walk away from that dinner table and done absolutely nothing. I reached for the notepad I kept by my bed and started writing. Not feelings, not complaints. Facts. Step 1. Claim the prize without telling anyone in this house. Step 2. Find an attorney and financial advisor before they know anything. Step 3. Find a place to live. My place, not a room at the end of someone else's hallway. The next morning, I was up by 6, showered, dressed in my good khakis, and the button-down shirt Ryan had gotten me for Christmas 2 years back. I came downstairs before anyone else was stirring and made coffee the way I'd done every morning for 18 months. By the time Jessica came clicking down in her work heels at 7:30, I had 3 appointments booked under my full name, Harold Edwin Pierce. She looked surprised to see me up and dressed so early morning, she said, pouring her coffee into one of those travel mugs. "Morning," I said back, pleasant as always. She left for her real estate office without another word. For the first time in 18 months, I felt like myself again. The attorney was a sharp woman named Patricia Williams. Her office was in the business district downtown, quiet and professional. When I'd called the day before, her assistant had been discreet and businesslike, which was exactly what I needed. I told Patricia everything: the lottery ticket, the exact amount, my living situation, what Ryan had said at dinner. She listened without interrupting, taking neat notes on a yellow legal pad. "First thing," she said when I finished, "have you told the Lottery Commission your name yet? Signed anything official?" "No. Haven't told a soul." "Good. We'll establish a trust before you claim. Keeps your name out of the public records entirely. You'll also need a financial advisor. I have two I recommend highly." She explained about asset protection, about LLCs and revocable trusts, about keeping everything private until I decided what I wanted to do. It was like she'd helped 73-year-old lottery winners before, though I suspect that wasn't exactly common. Over the next 3 weeks, I moved carefully and quietly. Met with the financial advisor, a straight-talking guy named Charles Kim who specialized in sudden wealth management. We discussed investment strategies, tax implications, charitable giving options. Charles had seen lottery winners before and knew the pitfalls. Most people who come into this kind of money make their biggest mistakes in the first 6 months, he told me. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. The trust was established under the name Edwin Holdings, LLC, my middle name combined with Betty's father's name, Harold. The Lottery Commission never saw Harold Pierce's name on any public document. The funds were routed into a private account at a bank clear across town, nowhere near where Jessica did her real estate banking. I kept my routines at home exactly the same. Same breakfast at 7, same evening walk around their neighborhood, same quiet man they'd been overlooking for a year and a half. But inside, I was different. When you stop trying to be invisible, things start to change, even if nobody notices right away. Jessica noticed first. She had a nose for anything that might affect her world. She mentioned it to Ryan on a Thursday evening while I was coming back from my walk. I heard their voices through their bedroom window, which was cracked open to let in the spring air. "Your dad's been going out more during the day. I saw some papers on the kitchen counter Tuesday before he took them back to his room. Looked like legal documents or something." A pause. Then Ryan's voice, tired from a long day managing his construction crews, probably just stuff from Mom's estate. "Financial paperwork. You know how that goes." Betty's estate had been completely settled 2 years ago. Every document filed, every account closed. Another pause. "I think I should ask him about it," Ryan said. He did the next morning over coffee. Very casual, like he'd rehearsed being concerned but not pushy, "Dad. Everything okay? Jessica mentioned you've had some appointments lately. Nothing medical, I hope." I looked at my son over the rim of my coffee mug. His face was worried, but underneath that worry was something else. Something watchful, like he was trying to read between the lines of whatever I might say. "I'm fine, Ryan. Just getting some paperwork in order. Administrative stuff, you know how it is when you get to be my age." He nodded and seemed to accept that, but I could tell the conversation wasn't really over. That evening, I noticed Jessica had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter in a way that looked accidental, but felt deliberate. I also noticed that the folder I kept locked in my room had been moved about half an inch to the left on my dresser. Someone had been trying to get into my business. I sat on my bed looking at that folder for a long moment. Then I made a decision that changed everything. I drove to the FedEx office downtown, made certified copies of every document inside and had them couriered to Patricia Williams' office for secure storage. While I was out, I did something I hadn't planned to do for another week. I drove through a neighborhood I'd been thinking about, a quiet area with older trees and real front porches, the kind of street where Betty and I might have moved if we'd ever had the money to upgrade. I'd already been talking to a realtor named Steve Rodriguez, a guy who worked a completely different territory from Jessica's real estate business. I'd been very careful about that detail. Steve had sent me several listings over the past week, but one house kept drawing me back. It was a classic 4-bedroom on Maple Street, built in the 1960s when they still used real wood and knew how to frame a house properly. Good bones, decent yard, and most importantly, a 2-car garage with enough space for a proper workshop. The kind of place where a man could fix things again, make things with his hands. When I called Steve from the FedEx parking lot, he picked up on the second ring. "Harold, good timing. I was just about to call you. The sellers came down another $5,000 on the Maple Street house. They're motivated." I looked at the house listing on my phone, sitting in my truck in that parking lot. The asking price was $275,000, a fair price for what it was in this market. With cash through the trust, I could close in 2 weeks. "Make the offer," I told Steve. "Full asking price, cash, fast closing." There was a brief pause. You sure? We might be able to negotiate them down a bit more, I'm sure. I want that house. Steve called me back an hour later while I was driving home to Ryan's place. Congratulations, Harold. They accepted. Clean deal, 2-week closing. You're going to love living there. I sat in their driveway for a few minutes before going inside, letting those words sink in. Living there? Not visiting, not staying temporarily, not being tolerated. Living in my own place again. The shift in atmosphere at Ryan's house was noticeable over the next few days. Jessica started making efforts she hadn't made since my first week there 18 months ago. She cooked a real breakfast Sunday morning. Pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee, and set a place for me at the table without being asked. "Morning, Harry," she said, using the nickname she'd dropped after the first month. "Sit down, it's almost ready." Ryan started coming home for dinner more regularly, asking about my day, what I remembered about places he'd traveled for work, what I thought about this or that. Even the kids seemed more attentive. Bradley showed me something on his phone about classic cars. Ashley brought me a drawing she'd made of a flower garden. It was a well-executed campaign. I recognized it because I'd spent 42 years watching people try to sell me things at the garage. The smart ones knew that the most dangerous moment in any negotiation was when the other party stopped pushing back and started being extra nice. They wanted to know about the money. They could sense that something had changed, and they wanted to reposition themselves before I made any decisions they couldn't influence. If they could make me feel guilty enough, grateful enough, or loved enough, maybe I would reconsider whatever I was planning. I wasn't cold to them during this period. I want to be clear about that. I was present and pleasant. I thanked Jessica for the breakfast and talked with Ryan about work and ate Bradley's favorite cookies when he brought them to me. But I didn't tell them anything about the house, the trust, or the $14 sitting in an account across town. The confrontation came 2 days before my closing. Ryan and Jessica appeared at my bedroom door together Thursday evening. This time Jessica knocked first, which was new. "Can we come in, Dad?" Ryan asked. They sat on the edge of my bed, side by side. Jessica's hands were folded in her lap like she was at church. I took the desk chair and turned it to face them. "Harry," Jessica began, using my nickname again. "We need to talk. We think you're making some big decisions, and we're worried about you doing this alone." Ryan nodded. "Dad, we know something's going on. The appointments, the documents. If you've come into some money somehow, we just want to make sure you're being careful." I looked at my son, then at his wife. Both of them trying so hard to look concerned instead of curious. Both of them calculating what my financial situation might mean for their future. "We're your family," Jessica continued. "We should be helping you navigate whatever this is. There are people out there who take advantage of seniors, especially when large amounts of money are involved." There it was. The assumption that I was too old, too naive, too incompetent to handle my own affairs. The same assumption that had led them to treat me like a burden for 18 months. "I appreciate your concern," I said, my voice steady. "Both of you, but I have excellent legal and financial advice from people I trust. I'm not making any decisions that would hurt anyone in this family." Jessica's expression shifted slightly. The concerned mask slipped just enough to show what was underneath. "Harry, if you're hiding assets, that could create serious legal problems when you pass. Estate planning, tax implications. Think about your grandchildren. Think about what this means for Ryan." I stood up from my chair. Not fast, not angry. Just a 73-year-old man who'd heard enough. "Jessica, I've thought about everything very carefully. My estate is properly managed. My son is provided for in my will according to my wishes. And as of Saturday, I'll be living in my own home again." The silence that followed was loud enough to wake the dead. Ryan's face went through several changes. Confusion first, then understanding, then something that might have been shame if he'd been raised right. "Dad," he started. "I love you, Ryan," I said, which was true and seemed to surprise him. "But I'm not going to manage my life around the comfort of people who saw me as a problem to be solved." I moved out Saturday morning. Professional movers I'd hired through Patricia Williams, discreet and efficient. Everything I owned fit in one truck. By noon, my room was empty and clean, ready for whatever Jessica wanted to do with it. I left Ryan a note on the kitchen counter. "Thank you for the time I spent here. The house on Maple Street has room for the grandkids whenever they want to visit. We'll talk soon." Ryan called me that evening. I was sitting on my new front porch, watching the sun set through the oak trees when my phone rang. "Dad, can we meet for coffee? Just the two of us?" We met Tuesday at a diner downtown. Ryan looked older when he walked in, like he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. "I know you won money," he said after we'd ordered. "I don't know how much, and maybe that's not my business anymore. But I need you to know something. What I said at dinner about moving out, that wasn't about money. I was stressed and I said something stupid. I'm sorry. I listened while he talked." He apologized for the dinner, for not standing up to Jessica's comments about my finances, for letting things get so bad between us. Some of it sounded rehearsed, but some of it sounded real. "Ryan," I said when he was finished, "I'm not closing the door on us, but I'm not the man who sits quietly in the corner anymore. If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be between equals." He nodded slowly, like he was setting something down that he'd been carrying for a long time. 6 months later, Jessica filed for divorce. Turns out she'd been more interested in my potential inheritance than in being Ryan's wife. She tried one last time to challenge my financial decisions through the courts, but Patricia Williams had built walls around everything that were higher than Jessica could climb. Cost her plenty in legal fees for nothing. Ryan gets the kids every other weekend now. They come to my place on Maple Street, where I've got a workshop set up in the garage and a vegetable garden growing in the backyard. Bradley's learning to rebuild a carburetor, and Ashley's helping me grow tomatoes bigger than her fist. I'm not rich in the way people think about lottery winners. I still drive my old pickup truck, still wear my work clothes when I'm fixing things. The difference is that nobody treats me like I'm inconvenient anymore. The house fits me like a comfortable old jacket, and every morning when I wake up in my own bedroom, I remember what it feels like to be respected. The money sits in investments Charles Kim manages, growing quietly while I live off the interest and my pension. I bought Jessica's dream house, the one she used to talk about. 4 bedrooms, modern kitchen, swimming pool, 3-car garage. Cost me $850,000 cash. It's beautiful. I rent it to a young family with kids who actually use that pool and fill those bedrooms with laughter. Sometimes I drive by just to see children playing in the yard, making it a real home instead of a showpiece. If you're listening to this and someone in your life has been making you feel like a burden, family or not, I want you to understand something. Age doesn't make you disposable. Being dependent doesn't make you worthless. You have the right to be treated with dignity whether you're 30 or 73 or 90. At 73, I learned that you can't make people respect you by making yourself smaller. Respect isn't something you can buy with gratitude or earn through silence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop trying to fix what's broken and start building something new. You're never too old to stand up for yourself, and it's never too late to find your own front porch.